your criticism is that all we've got to rely on is testimony from others, all of whom are stuck with just their own sense perception. But that is, in fact, not the only way that we can determine that, say, a bush is green. We can build scientific instruments.
All of that still...
Huh?
All of that still goes back to sense perception, and that's what he was saying. Basically, you're arguing that we can't trust the senses, and that's what everything's based on.
It sounds to me like you're arguing solipsism, sir.
I'm saying you don't need evidence to trust the senses.
No,
yes,
we're saying that
we have evidence. You can quibble with the validity of the evidence, right? It's certainly true that the evidence is not 100% reliable, but at least we're in the realm of physical reality where there is a vast amount of imperfect evidence that physical reality exists and had, certain things about it are true, like that bush is green. But Christianity, or religion in general, faith-based beliefs, are a completely different thing. There's no evidence of any sort of perception at all that justifies the conclusions of faith.
Okay.
Of spiritual, in
I'm
spiritual
going to give you an
things.
outline of the argument that I'm going to present. Ready? Here's the outline. There are certain sources of belief that deliver beliefs that we don't need evidence to justify, such as sense perception, memory, intuition, things like that. Belief in the external world, belief in other minds. Those sorts of beliefs that we have, we're totally justified in believing them, even though we can't provide a non-question begging argument.
Hang on. You're going to have to kind of backtrack, because I have an objection to what you said right from the get-go, because you're saying that these are sources of belief. Belief is what your mind accepts to be true based on the input. So you can say that sense perception is an input, that we sense our surroundings and we come to that. You can do the same thing with memory and intuition, but you can't build a case that we trust these things which may be unreliable, and therefore we should trust just bald claims which are also unreliable.
I totally agree with you. That's not the claim that I'm making.
So restate what you said.
Okay, so there are certain faculties that we have, like sense perception, memory, intuition, among others.
But they're not all faculties.
Those are not all faculties. I don't know where you're getting that.
Memory, intuition, those things are not faculties.
There's no intuition system in the brain.
Here's what a faculty is. I'm just going to define the word to include these things, and it doesn't really matter how other people use the word. This is what I'm going to use the word for.
Right.
Faculties include things like memory, intuition, and sense perception. That's how I'm using the word. Okay, so we have these faculties as I've defined the word. They deliver beliefs. We accept these beliefs, and we're justified in accepting these beliefs without independent evidence. I don't have to go investigate the world to believe that it wasn't created 5 minutes ago with all of my memories telling me it's older, but really it was just created 5 minutes ago. I mean, people reject that belief all the time without evidence, and they're totally justified in doing that. And like you said, you reject solipsism without evidence. And people, like 99% of people reject that belief without evidence.
But
so we have these basic beliefs that we don't require evidence for. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I explained to you the reason why I do that. And I don't call my reason for rejecting solipsism is that if solipsism is true, everything is pointless anyway.
Okay,
right?
so it's a pragmatic argument.
Hold on.
Pragmatic argument.
What? Hang on.
It would be really...
Caller.
He was just clarifying. It's a pragmatic argument.
Yes, it's a pragmatic argument. Let me make my argument. That I don't call that a justification beyond the simple pragmatic fact of the matter, right? I mean, if it really came down to it, I would have to admit, no, it's really, to me, a matter of taste. I would rather operate as if the universe existed than that it didn't. But that is not similar to faith. With faith, there is not just the universe that we do have evidence for that's being accepted. It's this entire spiritual realm for which we have no evidence whatsoever except for the taste. It suits the taste of the believers. They want to believe that there is such a thing.
Okay. That's like the second stage of my argument. I'm still at the first stage. So consider someone who has never really thought philosophically about solipsism. They don't even know what it means. but they don't believe that they're the only minds, right? They believe there are other minds. That's like 99% of the people on the street believe, yeah, there's other minds, right?
Okay, hang on. Build your whole argument, shotgun approach as fast as you can, because we can't let you take up the whole show.
Okay, so there are certain faculties that deliver beliefs. We take them as basic. We don't require evidence. Now, it may be, if Christianity is true, there's another faculty that Aquinas called the sensus divinitatis. This faculty, like memory, like intuition, like sense perception, delivers beliefs about God. And if Christianity is true, this faculty is reliable, and we don't require evidence. Just as we don't require evidence for memory, intuition, or sense perception, we don't require evidence for Christian belief if Christianity is true. It's conditional.
Okay.
And it's not my argument. It's Alvin Planning, as you guys have maybe heard.
It's fundamentally flawed because it assumes that we don't require evidence to justify and verify those things that you're listing as faculties. We, in fact, do. It's the fact that my senses have proven reliable in the way that I understand reality over and over and over again, that I've built up a good reason to trust them. I'm not just taking them on faith in the absence of evidence. I am trusting my senses because of the evidence.
Okay,
That's
well,
the fundamental difference.
Here's the evidence that you're providing in favor of your sense perception. You're providing evidence from an induction and other sense perception, and that's viciously circular. I could ask you the same question about why you trust induction and why you trust sense perception, and you're stuck with this really terrible vicious circularity. I think it would be better to accept, as many contemporary epistemologists do, that there are certain basic beliefs that don't require justification. They're foundational,
Sure.
you might say.
Sure.
Well, why would...
sensory input is foundational. It doesn't require necessarily justification. But
Okay.
because it can be justified by independent verification, that's one of the reasons why it's trustworthy. To then posit an entire other supernatural realm and some other imaginary faculty that is a conduit of understanding to this supernatural realm with no evidence to back it up is just it's no different. It supports Christianity, it supports Hinduism, it supports Buddhism, it supports fairies, it supports every possibility. Anybody could claim that they have had some kind of divine revelation through this faculty of divine induction that tells them about anything. Bigfoot, space aliens.
Okay, here's a crucial point that I'd like to make. And
caller,
hang on, Jeff.
I have a question. I want to know why I forget the name that you cited for this faculty that supposedly provides information about God. Why would that be one of these foundational things? I mean, it's clearly obvious why we need to rely on our sense perception, because when we don't, we get hit by cars and fall off cliffs and things. Mm-hmm. It's obvious why we need to reject solipsism, because if we don't, we'd all just sit around and go, oh, well, this is all pointless. Why on earth would this so-called foundational perception that provides information of God, why would that fall into the category of foundational things that we can't go without?
Okay, so you guys are both, it seems that you're both asking a similar question. Why believe that this faculty exists?
Yeah, what good is it?
Right, I haven't argued that it does exist. Here's what I've argued for. If it exists, if, conditional, hypothetical, if it exists, Christianity is justified without evidence.
Great. Well, when you've proved that it exists, then you can, if Christianity is true, if you can prove that Christianity is true, then you've provided the justification for trusting that, trusting those sorts of perceptions.
I totally agree with you, but here's the point of the argument.
But now, dude, you've been accusing us of circularity, and you are in the land of circularity now.
Okay, here, remember when we started, there were two possible objections I said you might be making. The first objection is that there is no evidence for Christianity. I said I can't address that. That's a really long conversation. I do believe there is evidence, but I'm not going to address that. The second objection that you made was that people don't have evidence and yet they believe, and they're not justified, or that's a bad thing. They're below par. Now, this conditional that I've endeavored to prove, that if Christianity is true, then we don't need evidence, that handles the second objection that you made.
No, it doesn't.
Because we don't require evidence in order to believe.
You've bootstrapped the whole thing.
You have just defined it.
That takes care of the second.
No. You've just defined it so that you've eliminated the need for evidence. And you might as well just say, I define God to be existent and therefore he exists. It's absurd. You can't say that if this is true, then therefore Christianity doesn't need any justification, and use that as a justification. Because, you know, while you were talking about sensory input and not needing to be able to independently verify it, the fact of the matter is it is independently verified, which is why we trust it.